And I look around that, I can almost see the newsroom in my head now. It was manual typewriters, ladies and gentlemen. So it was, forget computers, they didn't have them. 3-ply paper, so you type and there's carbon. This is like describing something from another planet. I can see people glazing over and panicking, but there's carbon in between the bits of paper. And as you type, you print on 3 different pages. You take one and you spike it on your desk, and you take the other 2 and you give them to the news editor or the deputy news editor, Jeff Grimmer, who taught me 3/4 of everything that I know. And then he would spike one on his desk with a spike. And then he would physically, and this is the really amazing bit of technology, using his legs, he would walk the other thing to the sub-editors, who would then mark it up. They would roll it, and the most high-tech thing we had was a tube that you put the copy, the piece of paper into, and it would suck the piece of paper around to the other side of the building, where it would then be taken out of the tube by people who would set the type in metal on the printing presses. And then as I walked out the building, I saw my article on the front page or wherever come off the presses as I went to get my bike. And that was the Coventry Evening Telegraph in 1986. It's not even that long ago. It's not even 30 years ago. And one day I was running down the stone steps at Coventry, and I tripped over some boxes at the bottom of the stairs because I was not looking where I was going. And I looked around, and these boxes had computers in them. And this would have been late 87 now. So I thought, this will be good, because the newspaper will bring in computers, and they may sell 110,000 copies a day. And they'll be able to print in color. They'll be able to have more journalists, more than 85. They'll be able to have more trainees, more than 3. Only now do we understand what disaster those machines spelled for the newspaper, ladies and gentlemen, because, of course, it wasn't just the newspaper that got computers, it was the readers who got the computers too. The computers allowed them to look elsewhere for news, and as a result, how many people are working on the Coventry Evening Telegraph now? 85? 9. 9 now. And the pain of that, I cannot describe. The pain of all these bright graduates that I was with at Durham, who all wanted to become newspaper journalists, didn't see it was coming to an end. Why didn't we spot it? It's just unbelievable to me. Radio 2 presenter, we've obviously lost Terry Wogan in the last couple of days, who's our most successful presenter of all time, without question. And a lot of people say, how was he such a great broadcaster? You know, what was his technique? And we could talk a bit about what made his technique so good, but fundamentally, he was good because he was real, because the Wogan you heard on the air was the real person. You thought you're listening to a really nice guy and a generous, warm spirit, and it really was him. And so, again, if I had any, I've already said be flexible in your careers. My other piece of advice would be to seek out what is real. You see this in politics a lot, that the people who come out of the screen at you, whether it's Corbyn or Boris Johnson or even Anne Widdecombe, bless her, who exist in 3 dimensions, are actually not drilled and spun, and they're not on an autocue. And we were doing an item on fires in thatched cottages in Hampshire. 6 thatched roofs had caught fire in the space of 2 weeks. And we booked to speak to a woman called Pauline, who is quite posh from Buckinghamshire, and she has a thatched roof, and she's concerned that her neighbor's bonfire could set fire to it if the wind changes, okay? So far, so good. But I didn't know that the word thatch has more than one meaning. I had a sheltered childhood, and no one told me in Cheam that thatch is a slang term for a lady's most private area. I didn't know that. So when Pauline in Buckinghamshire said she was worried that her neighbor's bonfire might set light to her roof, I naturally asked, and what would happen if a spark flew into your thatch? And straight away I saw I had about 100 messages on Twitter saying, ha, 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 get the radio on now. And Pauline didn't help, because she replied, if my thatch caught fire, my husband would get the hose out. I sort of think maybe that's going out of vogue now, actually. I think that whole spin thing is really 90s. And if you look at whatever you think of Corbyn, when he came on my show last, my goodness, he answered every question. And the listeners loved him for it. They may not support him or vote for him, I don't know, but they thought they were so refreshed by somebody answering the questions. You can't describe the moment when this bloke called Alan says, all right, Jeremy, 5 seconds, 4, 3, and then it goes, and now dancing the cha-cha-cha, Jeremy Vine and Karen Clifton. And the band, which is about 20 instruments behind Dave Arch, starts. It's like your hair blows forwards, you know. The audience went completely and utterly nuts. I mean, some of them were screaming. I could barely even hear. And all I could remember was this German choreographer had come to try to help me with some of the moves. And he said, just try to get 1 extra millimeter between your head and your shoulders, 1 millimeter. And I had this thought in my head. And it was like I was running out of a burning house. That's what the dance looked like when I looked at it back, you know. And of course, then I got completely smashed by the judges. You know, Craig said, you know, you would not even get booked for the National Dad Dancing Championships in Devon with that.